What's going on, everybody? We're sitting here with Ed Latimore, and we'll do an intro in a second. But we were just chatting pre-recording about some of the geographic differences and where we all are. Ed, you said something interesting. I don't want to over recap this, but we were just talking about how sometimes it's tough. Like Ed's in Pittsburgh right now, great city.
Great city.
But what were you saying, man? You said,
well, what's happened is especially as I've really come into what I want to do and how I am approaching the world and realize where my strengths are, especially with the internet and communication and talking to people. It's really amazing how many of my peers are located in like 3 or 4 places. And it's like, well, if I want to go where I'm going to have the conversations I like to have and interact with the people that I'm already interacting with on a daily basis on the internet, but more in depth, a relocation is coming up. And I already told the fiance, when the lease is up, we're definitely going to move to some place. I've narrowed it down to 2 places, and I don't even know why I have the other place on there. I guess it's because I don't want to make a beeline to Austin. But I'm curious. I really like Florida, and the only thing I don't like about Austin, it would probably be like 3 times bigger if this was the case, is it's not on water. If it was a coastal city, we'd be playing a different tune,
That's hysterical.
For sure.
You're speaking the same as I think my wife and I have conversations with. I lived in Fort Lauderdale for 10 years, and I'm born and raised in Philadelphia. So Philly's not quite on the ocean, but it's close enough to where, quick shot over Jersey. Like every summer I spend weeks and weeks at the shore. And we moved to Nashville a couple years ago, and it's cool here. It's like an up and coming city. It's a little southern for me, I guess, is the way to put it. Like I move a little bit faster than the people around here. But if it were up to me, we'd probably go back to Florida. It's kind of crazy. Like there's something about Florida. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the saltwater or something where there is that Florida man type thing where it's a real thing. Believe me, some wild shit goes down in Florida. But
you want to know what's crazy?
Unhappy by the ocean.
The thing that I enjoy most, or one of the things, if we were to rank the top 2, I love the weather, man. I'm a big fan of that humidity and the rain.
Yeah.
But it's always warm. And I know a lot of people don't like that. Like before I met my fiance, she lived in Florida and we met because she moved up here to take a job. But she's like, I don't like that. And it's just, girl hair and stuff like that is the big deal. Gets all frizzy. But every time I'm there, man, I am absolutely in love. I'm just like, why am I going back? Oh, that's right. And I have I don't want to say nothing, but I don't have. This past December, my mom passed, and that was the only person that I I need to be around to help out and do stuff with. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm here. So
So there's a point that I wanted to make about this. I'm glad you brought this up because for people listening, this was something that I realized probably a little later in my career than I would have liked, which is the step function difference that comes in your either career or your business when you get around people who are doing the same thing. So the way that we had initially started talking about this, Ed had said, the city is great, but I found that the people who are on my level business wise tend to be clustered in these other areas. Yeah. And that took me a long time to realize too, man, which is weird because I grew up moving all over the place. And so, in my head, for a long time, it was like, well, every city's the same. You can find cool people in every city. And to some extent, that's true to some extent. But then all of a sudden, when you find your thing and you find your place, something clicks that can't be ignored. And actually, just for people listening, Paul Graham has this great essay on this. It's called Cities and Ambition. And we'll link to it in the show notes. But his basic thought, and I think he was the one who really encapsulated it well. In fact, maybe it was after reading his piece that this really started to sink in for me. His basic point in that article is every city, they've got mostly the same things, but they've all got cool people, they've all got great food, whatever. But every city's got its thing that it's focused on, the thing that you pursue in order to gain status in that city.
Yes. Oh, man, I never thought of it that way. But
Yep.
here I'm like, I am a bit of an anomaly. And not, I mean, sure, in a good way, there's some cool things that like come with that status wise, but it's more like an anomaly the way you look at an alien and you're like, what are you and how do I make sense of you? The time I've spent in Austin, for example, I just had so many just conversations, and it was kind of assumed, that you're here because you do X, Y, or Z, because we kind of know who you are already, right? And that's one of the things that I benefit from. And now it's like, why aren't you here? You
Mm.
know? And I had a buddy, not had him, he's still one of my great friends. I was even the best man in his wedding. When we were 21, he and his now wife, they moved to Los Angeles. And I did not understand it. I didn't get it because I hate LA. Every time I go, I'm reminded of why I
love
don't
LA.
like LA. I can't, there's nothing about it that like, okay, so do I hate it more than like any other city? Maybe a little, but it's not like this visceral hate. It's like if I have to be here, like I couldn't imagine living here, and I had to live there for 18 months, and that's like where this comes from. But when he moved out there, I didn't get it. But he told me he's like, the people out here they move differently than the people back in Pittsburgh, and I never understood that until I had my own experience with it, and then I got it. We're not pursuing even remotely close to the same thing. They're all involved in everything related to showbiz. They got SAG cards and been featured on all kinds of stuff on cable and Netflix. They're doing great. But it would not be my kind of great. I would just be like, oh, what are we gonna talk about out there? Contrast that being in Austin, every single person I chat with, we all work for ourselves off of the internet. We figured out kind of this alternative. Well, right now, it's close to at least small minority, but right now I still look at it as just like alternative perspective on education and meeting people, and everything is different. Big focuses on fitness. It's a different world in some places, and whatever you find is like your thing, and you get there, you're like, okay, you can be successful anywhere, but here it's how it naturally aligns with your value system.
Looking in
Yeah.
the same direction.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I like that, Tim. You're not swimming upstream anymore, you know?
It's something I had to struggle with a lot. Like, I love the city of Philadelphia. I'm so proud to be from there. I love like my family. My family's from Scotland, and my father was the first American in the Stoddarts, and so he's from Philadelphia, and like it shaped me in a lot of ways. And Philly's blowing up a little bit too. There's a pretty big entrepreneurial community there, but something I noticed with northern cities especially is that when you're born there, like you stay there, and then like you have kids there, and then like your kids grow a family there, and it's just really communal in that way, which has its positives as well. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think Ethan and I actually talked about this on a show a couple months ago, where when I first got to Florida, everybody's hustling and everyone's after something, and it's just aligned with me because I've always naturally been so restless and so like what else, and I couldn't quite figure out like what that was for most of my life, and then when I got to Florida, it's like, okay, I get it. Like people come here because they want to be somebody else. You and I have a lot in common, Ed, and that's why I was thrilled when you said that you would come on the show. I'm always drawn to people who force themselves to write. And although, as Ethan and I have been doing this podcast, we decided to just be a lot more lackadaisical. A lot of times marketing podcasts have like specific lessons and they like want to teach you in a real formal way. And Ethan and I decided when we're going to do the show, like we're just going to hang out, do whatever comes to mind, right? But the one under the one, what do you call it? Like underlying current of the show has always been writing. And I think we just naturally are drawn to people that write. And I can tell. I don't know how to say this in a way that doesn't seem kind of like a backhanded compliment by any means. I mean this as a compliment, but I could tell that like you had to force yourself to become a better writer. Like it probably wasn't something that just came naturally to you.
You want to hear something funny about
Please.
that? So you can go on my blog. It dates back to
I went back pretty
2012,
far. That's how I can tell. I'm like, damn, he's come a long
2012,
way.
and all right, and that's with like cleaning up articles along the way.
Sure.
One of the things that made a big difference, I mean, just huge, is the 4 years I spent when I finally went back to college. And I didn't like major in it. I majored in physics, man. But you have to write. You have to be very good at explaining your ideas clearly because the smallest imprecision changes what you mean. A little example of this in colloquial speech, we say, how fast is something going? What's the speed, right? And in physics, we have to be precise. Well, do you want to know the magnitude? Do you just want to know the magnitude? How fast, or do you want to know the direction? When you add direction, it turns into a velocity, right? When we say speed up or slow down, I don't even like saying that word. I prefer accelerate, right? that's a very precise, okay? Oscillate versus rotate versus revolution. These little things that we sometimes just use colloquially. The force versus momentum. I hate when someone says, he moved with all that momentum or something like that, or he's got a lot of momentum, and that's why it's hard to stop. I mean, sure, but the real reason is, the force he's got too, moving you backwards when he hits you. But all of that precision, that constant writing, and then we had, science writing and then other courses. I became a better writer because there was external pressure correcting me. If I like, I really believe I would still be where I was in 2015 in terms of my writing ability, or we'll even go 2017 because I'm looking at my self-published book, right? Which was, I mean, it was a good book. A lot of people have gotten stuff from it, but in terms of editing and word flow and things like that, I'm embarrassed, Well, but it's growth, and as long as people got the message, they got the message. But if I hadn't had constant external criticism from professors, I don't know where my writing would be, but I know it wouldn't be where it's at now.
I'm glad you mentioned the growth thing. I don't think I've ever talked about this in the podcast, but there's like a couple of rules that I try to keep in mind for myself, just as a writer. By the way, I feel like we haven't formally done this yet. For everybody who doesn't know who Ed is, former professional fighter, best-selling author. You also got some courses and stuff online as well. So like
related to writing on Twitter.
Yep. Which, by the way, did you change the name of it, or have you launched a second one? Because I saw something that said like the name was there. You put out one course that was like Twitter is the new cocaine, right, or something like that.
Okay. So here's what happened. The very first thing I released when I recognized kind of the stylistic devices that worked best on the platform at the time was engagement is the new cocaine. Okay.
Yep.
And that was the first. And then, so I wrote that actually to appease a partner of mine who I was working with on a second course. And I wrote that. I said, look, man, this is going to sell. We're going to do great. We're partnering with your thing. And it took off to the point I was very surprised. That's when I knew I had something. And then the next course, the re-up, talks about, all of the other things of growing on Twitter. And then with that, I realized, okay, well, people have no idea how to get started. So let me write, how to get your first 1,000 followers. And the brilliance of the internet, I said, well, let me make sure I can test these ideas. I'm pretty confident they're going to work. Confident enough to where I'll bet $250. So I put out a tweet and I said, hey, you guys trying to grow, whatever, and looking for X number of people. I got 52 people in my little $250 Twitter growth course to get your first 1,000 followers. And I was like, oh, learn some stuff. And then, more about writing. So the whole growth engine pack is actually composed of 6 courses.
Oh, awesome. Okay. And as Tim mentioned, we're going to dive into some of that in a little bit. This idea of like making money online, which is where you spend all your time right now. You are very much an internet entrepreneur. Yeah, all the time. But just for anybody who maybe doesn't recognize the name, that's who we're talking to right now. The man, the myth, the legend. And we're going to be talking about, how to make money and also this concept of writing. But what I mentioned a second ago is that I said, I'm glad that you brought up that sense of dissatisfaction that comes with looking back at your old writing, because there's a couple of rules of being a writer that I think people need to embrace if they're ever going to actually do it. And I know this because, so Ed, just in case you don't know, well, of course you don't know me. I write for The Hustle, which is a newsletter company. So at this point in my career, writing is my daily job. I get paid to do that. But for a long time, that wasn't the case. I came up originally, I was a web developer, and then I did some other startup type building tasks. Like I've worked in startups of different sizes and stuff like that. Basically had to accidentally navigate like a salmon into this career that I've always wanted of being a writer. So I can look back on it and I can say that, even if you want it, you're not really guaranteed to get it. And there's a lot of things that can get in your way. There's a lot of things that got in my way. And one was, I guess, I realized that there's a couple things you need to embrace if you're ever going to actually do it. One is this. It's a very long preamble for what I hope is going to be a helpful tip. If you become a writer, you are going to die without having written everything that you want to write. And that has to be okay. Because the alternative is that at some point you're going to run out of stuff to write.
Which is a much bigger problem.
Yeah.
Which is a much bigger problem. But, that can stop people because they go, I'll start that idea, but I want to finish this idea first. Or I can't really start working on my book because I haven't started that other idea of mine. And, there's this grasping at perfection, like everything's going to fall into place and you're going to write it all in the perfect order and your career is just going to progress in this linear direction. It's not going to happen. It's going to be chaotic. And you will die. If you're lucky, you will die with things unwritten. And that's got to be okay from day one. The second rule is that, again, if you're lucky, if you're successful, you will hate most of what you look back at. Right? Not all of it. Every once in a while, you write something, you look back at it a couple years later, and you're like, this actually wasn't that bad, But the reality is, if you're still growing, you should be able to look back at your old stuff and see the flaws in it. And then I have another question about writing, but I want to pause for a second, just throw it over to Tim. Was there anything you wanted to ask about? I know you just mentioned that you and Ed have a lot in common. So
yeah, I mean, it seems like every single time we record an episode, I always drop some kind of Seth Godin slogan or a little quirk that he's taught me, and it's like everybody wants to show their good writing and nobody wants to show their bad writing.
Oh, it's true, man.
You can't have one without the other, And so I always remind myself that when it's like, oh, am I ready to hit publish? Like me and Ethan even talked about it a few times because we didn't know what we were doing when we were doing this podcast. And I remember we had this one episode in particular. It was like, what do you think? Should we publish that? And I'm like, yes, hit publish. And then you move on to the next one. And it's like Mike Rose said, he's like, keep the cameras rolling. Yeah. So you just have to get comfortable.
Yeah, you have to. It's really, I had 1 year on the blog. I remember this super clearly because it stands out. I don't know if my web developer changed the way things are organized, but the way they used to be organized by year. And it stood out because I only published 4 pieces in a whole year. That's just not acceptable, right? And I think about what was going on that year. I had a lot. That was when I was like really deep in the physics stuff and still training. And those are two just mind draining things. But I regret not writing because that's where I had the most. Probably had not the most, but certainly a lot of raw material to pull from. Because as a writer, because of the nature of what writing is, very rarely, if ever, really, will you be in a position where you have all the time and all the time to do it because you have other responsibilities in life. You make it too young and you don't have any money. You make it old, well, you got a family to worry about. And you still got to make money if there's like no money. So no matter what, one of the things that I had to really accept is that if I'm going to seriously create written content, if that's going to be like the hill that I want to die on, then I have to carve out blocks of time. I have to do that. Otherwise, it won't get done because you can always find a reason to not write, especially because writing, for the most part, people don't realize, what writing has allowed me to do is whatever I want. That's only because it's given me an audience to do whatever I want with. I don't remember who said it, but it's the truest thing that I've ever read about kind of what I do online with writing. And it's build the distribution first, then build whatever you want. When you have a mailing list of 30,000 people with an open rate of 40% and 170 Twitter followers and 50 something thousand on IG, you can write what you want. I mean, not what you want because you'll lose fans, but you have a lot of freedom to go with. But that takes a long time. You don't just wake up and get that. And it's that time it takes to get an audience that kills a lot of people, that makes them go, this isn't worth it. Yeah. Well, if you're doing it for the right reasons, it's always going to be worth it. But if you're in it to get paid, give up. I talk to guys all the time in the kind of marketer copywriter space, and they're like, "Oh, why would you have a blog? No one reads blogs." Well, yeah, they do. I know that because I see my numbers. But like, it's not because I'm trying to make an instantaneous dollar from the website. That just sets me up to be able to do so. I had this not a huge argument, but it was a huge debate back when I self-published my first book, not caring what other people think is a superpower. And people were like, "Why would you put that on Amazon? You could put it on Gumroad and charge $50." And I said, because on Gumroad, no one's going to find it organically and my name won't ring bells. This is a long-term play and you don't understand it because you don't, I think as a writer, you kind of have to think long-term because it's not a quick thing, but I got it. Right. And that's some of the ideas that we come and develop and bring along with the craft, but it all comes back to the main point, which is this is not a way to make money.
Quick money.
Not quick money, but it's very sustainable and reliable once you get people who like your stuff. And now, for the past 4 years, I've put so much energy into learning SEO on page. Anyhow, I have no interest in learning behind the scenes. I pay a guy for that. But in terms of, how people think about a website when they come to it and with the intent and how to write to that intent. And then, you got to have pieces to do that. But then if you do enough of those, your other pieces where you be more honest, or you're always being honest, but without being so optimized, you can just write and then people discover you and it works great.
I'm glad you mentioned the sort of long time horizon that can be involved in this type of work. It's something that I don't think is talked about enough. It's certainly something I struggled with when I was outside of the industry because I think, and I've said this about other things as well, it's easy to look at people who are winning and just assume that, that just happened for them quick and that you're somehow doing something wrong because that's not happening for you. I had a great conversation with a friend recently, Alexis Grant. Yeah, it's Lexi Grant. Okay, so Alexis Grant, she recently founded she's founded a bunch of media startups and she just launched another one recently. And what's really interesting about the story there is that the company's doing great. They're getting all kinds of attention, featured in the New York Times. They've got advertisers, everything. But that was, more than a year in the making that she took to build that company. And that's coming after building several other media companies. So she's been in this world for a long time. When was the first time that you really realized, like in your bones, that you could make this work as a business? And how far into your actual journey as a writer was that?
Oh, man, I know I have two very clear answers of two very distinct points where I said, this is like a thing. And three technically, but that's just like the first time you make $1. The first bit of change money I ever made on the internet, I wrote a review for Scott Adams, how to fail at anything and still win bigly. And I put the review up on my site and put the Amazon affiliate link, and someone clicked on it, bought it, and I got 6 cents. I said, "Oh, that's cool, man. Like, I remember that." Not gonna like live on 6 cents or anything, but it was cool to see it was possible. But when you self-publish stuff on Amazon, if you don't sell more than $100 worth in a month, they just roll it over. And if you don't sell more than $100 the next month, they just roll it over and keep rolling it over until the end of the year, where they got to clear out their coffers and they send it to you, whatever you had. So I remember it was December, the last week of December 2016, and we were in Paris. And we went to Paris, but we paid for the flights when I was fighting and I had money, so we were all good. the brokest vacation I ever took. Like you went like nervous. Like I had a $1,500 limit on my credit card, and it was American Express. And if you ever been to Europe, you know American Express is like not the credit card over there. So whenever I found a place that would like let me pay, I was like, oh, I'll pay, I'll cover it. And I took care of that. But we were walking one day, and that I got that notification that like $423 or something to that effect, like was put into my account while I was on vacation. And I was like, oh man, this is real. Like you can actually do this.
That's awesome.
And I was like, okay, let's really like try and put the pedal to the metal. And I self-published my first book in 2017, and it made some dollars here and there, and it was coming in because the book title combined with who I am, what I was studying, and me put my presence out there. That just kept getting me interviews, and after every interview, 50 or 100 copies would sell. It was cool, right? And then because at this point it was a Black Friday, November 2017, and buddy of mine was like, "Hey, I have a course that's coming out. Do you want to affiliate for it?" And I said, "Sure." I didn't even use my email list. I just popped a bunch of tweets off incessantly, and I made $8,000 that weekend. And I said, "Okay, I can actually do this." And it was cool because that was the first time I went to Portugal. We went for to bring in Christmas in November, and I was like, "Great!" Oh, and now I've got this article on my site about the Wim Hof breathing course. Every day while we were in Portugal, what I made on that article was more than what I spent, and I was like, "This is really cool." Like I'm like making like this vacation didn't even happen mathematically. Like it's awesome. So the next year, 2018, I put a lot of energy into it, and had a few really great sales. I started to learn and understand affiliate marketing, how to push my own book and my own product. And it was funny, man. The May 2018, it was like 3 life-changing events happened, all in the same week, mind you. I was on my way. I was making a comeback. Had been training a whole year. I had a fight in New Zealand. I was going to go to New Zealand and fight this guy. And with his record, but how he fought, I was like, this is kind of a gift for my first time back. It was great. Went sparring and got hit in the eye, broken orbital, and had to pull out the fight. I had a pretty bad concussion too. It was really bad.
Whoa! Just from a sparring match?
Oh yeah. You know what happened, man? This is just stupid. My coach, this is what happens. You should always listen to your coach. My coach did not give me permission to go spar this guy. I wouldn't spar him anyway because I was trying to build goodwill, so we had some sparring because it's hard to get sparring around here. That's one of the reasons I stay in shape, so I can help guys coming up because I know how hard it is to find heavyweight sparring in the region that we are in the country. And it was the same issues then, but I got cracked because I wasn't sharp yet. I was a better fighter and I was physically stronger, but he had been fighting continuously for 18 months, and I had just been back in the gym for like 4. And so it was a mismatch. So that was one big thing that happened. Next big thing that happened, I graduated with my degree. I went back to school. My first day in class, I was like 30 or 28, 29, somewhere in there, and then graduated finally with my degree in physics. And here's the doozy. In 1 week, 2 separate sales combined, I think I made $29,000. And I was like, all right. This is real.
What?
I understand what to do, and not only was it real, I knew how it worked.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I said, I get this, and now this is going to now mind you, this is not off my writing. This is what my writing, the audience, what it built me, and what it allows me to do. I understand there's an interplay. I have to be genuine with everything I offer. Otherwise, I lose that audience because they came for one thing. They didn't come to me because I'm selling stuff. I'm like, I use this. Check it out. I won't endorse anything that I've never used. Okay. So I have to be careful. And and I've walked that line very well, I think. And to avoid having to walk that line, that's why I started making my own stuff. And it turns out I have a knack for explaining things and principles and complex ideas. One of these things, kind of a side note, I had figured it out during the year 2017 because I took on tutoring to pay the bills. And I absolutely like tutoring was the first job I did that I didn't have to do. Like there was a point where I did it because I had to do it. But after everything was, I tutored for almost 2 years after I had that, after I was making 5 figures a month with no problem because I loved it. And it was like in person, I had to drive and be out late, but it was cool because I was teaching kids math and physics who had problems with math and physics. And that was the thing that I had problems with and had to struggle and get back to. But the point of me telling that story is I think one of my gifts that I've been able to harness so well on the internet is taking complex ideas and making them very digestible. And really, I enjoyed that to the point where I'm so fortunate I was born when I was born because now we have the internet. Because if I was born 30 years earlier, I'd be slaving as a school teacher, which I probably wouldn't feel like it'd be slaving because I wouldn't know any better. But now I get to do it on the internet.
Yeah, it's a huge opportunity. And just to sort of highlight the point for people too. Thanks for sharing that, by the way. Those are great stories. If I heard correctly, though, you're talking like 2016, 17, 18. This is like 4, 5, 6 years into when or at post when you launched the blog.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
yeah. So
Yeah.
just for people listening, I mean, I think one of the things to really take away from this is what you said earlier. It can be really sustainable. But it's not necessarily going to be a quick win. And if you're okay with that, great, because you're built for this. And like, keep going.
Yeah, and here's the cool thing, right? What did I do? So 2012 is when it started because I remember I was at basic training and I had a friend. I enlisted in January 4th, 2013. Went off to basic in June 2013. But I had a friend. I was handwriting the blog posts and sending them off in letters so she could upload them to my site. So I know the blog's been around at least that long. Okay, but so I'm making money doing the military when I drill. I had a job at a bank. I fought, until I started making real money fighting, or at least real enough money where I didn't have to do anything else. I did that. So I had all these little jobs in between while I'm building up the blog and writing. But however you do it, the point is you got to do something because you are not going to make any money initially. You're not going to rank for any keywords. No one's going to care what you have to say. You got to come in and establish and build up that credibility.
I enjoy this topic. I was laughing. I heard a phrase recently. I can't remember. I think it was actually on Sam's podcast. You got me to listen to an episode, Ethan. I haven't listened to one of Sam's podcasts in a while, but I didn't listen to the whole thing. I was on a walk with my kid. I remember in the intro that they do, he was saying like, "Why does everybody hate short money?" Where
Get
he's like,
rich quick schemes. Yeah.
yeah, he's like, I love get rich quick schemes. Like, why would I want to get rich long scheme? Like, if I can get rich quick, then I'm all for it. And I was thinking about that, right? I was like meditating on that for a little because I've always embraced this sort of like grind it out, grind it out. It's been a big part of my personality. I think the reason why I've been drawn to endurance training is because I always it's so funny too because you were just talking about cardio, Ed, on Twitter. And I always had this philosophy that like my muscles might not be that big, but I know if some shit goes down, like I will outlast everybody. And it's just been a mentality of mine that I've embraced. And I've been, how do I say this? It's been delightful for me to see so many examples firsthand that's not just some kind of slogan that people say because they need like a stool to stand on. Like it really is some kind of weird law of the universe where like entropy continuously kicks in over and over and over again, no matter what you do. And so it's that process of like keeping the hedges trimmed because everything will get screwed up over a long enough time if you don't continuously modify it and continuously modify it. It's felt good to know that like those things that I've been saying about myself over the last 12 years as I've been in this journey, like actually have proven to be true. And I can look back and see the people 10 years ago. It's like, oh, like they made it. It happened so quick for them. Like, damn. And then I'm not trying to put anybody down, but like I see those examples of people that like I used to be jealous of. and where the difference is with just like consistency and a little bit of grit for sure, but mostly like just long-term thinking, because long-term thinking gets long-term results, and that's really what I want from my life.
Yeah, here's the fundamental problem with trying to get something fast, in particular things that are meant to endure or last,
Yeah.
is that the faster it's built, the more you have like everything. There's a trade off with everything, right?
Yeah.
If you gain speed, you likely have to sacrifice structure or durability or even functionality because something's got to go to get speed. But if you take those points from speed and you put them into, I don't know, structure, well, it's going to take longer, but it's going to last a lot longer. You see this in the buildings in Europe, which just blow my mind. There are buildings that are
Hundreds of years
like
old.
because they were built. They weren't. I mean, maybe they were thinking build to last, but even if they weren't, they didn't have the ability to build things quickly, so things don't collapse. Right? You look at the cars compared to now versus then, even just 30 or 40 years ago. It's astounding. Like these cars, I mean, there's some they last 10, maybe 12 years, or whenever it reaches a certain mileage point. But there's still so much stuff that has to go into it. Meanwhile, your old car, they're still around, assuming all they had to keep the rust off, but it will still work and move. And all things, when the quicker you get them, you typically have to give something up. Nothing is free, And once you accept that, then you can decide what's more important. Sometimes it is important to get there first. And then once you're there, you can, but you're aware of that. The problem is when you're not aware of what you're giving up and what you're going to have to go and make up for when you don't do anything. It's like guys that try to cheat the game and use steroids, for example. Now, I have nothing for or against them. I just look at fundamentally what they do. Yeah, your body is. I've seen so many guys in the fight game have a bicep tear, like where it comes off, and I'm like, how's this happen? And I look at it, I go, well, I know what you used to do. Yeah. Your body was like, we're not built for this. You didn't take the time to structure us correctly, and so you're hurting.
That's so interesting, Ed, and I think a lot, and so like I can overthink these things sometimes, but I like lessons that are fundamental in nature, where they're like universal, right? And I didn't know that you have a degree in physics. I never went to school, but I've been into physics my entire life. It's actually kind of like a form of spirituality for me. It's like a way where I found like my higher power, And
physics is what made me believe in God 100%.
Totally. Yeah, I love what Elon Musk said. He's like, it's the actual only laws. Everything else is just suggestions. And like, what else is there? Like, what else is God other than that? And so, if you think about things fundamentally, there's no such thing as something for nothing. And like when you talked about speed, right? Like, I don't know, random silly example is the first one that comes to mind, but cheetahs are really, really, really fast, and they're only really, really, really fast for a very, very short amount of time. And that's just the sacrifice that they make, right? But there's like other things that can just endure. And that just, I mean, spiders, for instance, like weird example, right? But how long spiders been around for? Like a couple million years, and it's just because their metabolisms are designed to sit and wait and build something with like the absolute most precision and perfection that can possibly be built. And then that's it. And so I love seeing these just laws everywhere I look where it's just fundamentally true, whether we're talking about writing or business or get rich quick schemes or grinding it out for 30 years. Like there's no such thing as something for nothing. And you just have to accept that and play that game.
Yeah, that's the one of the things that I think is a sign of maturity is the fundamental realization that you can have anything, you just can't have everything.
Everything. I know. I love that line.
And when you get that, then you go, what is important? What matters to me? you know, and it's really painful for people to give up on. I won't even say give up on a dream because it's not even that intense, but to cut off a possibility, even if they didn't know, even if there was no chance they were going to go. Like you ever hoard stuff, like oh, I'm gonna use it one day. No, you're not. You're not. But that's how we're built psychologically. We want to make sure we have all the options, and the reality is you don't have all the options. Everything takes an investment of time at least. Like you're going to eventually run out of. Well, you want to live. Like we're all going to die one day, and those kind of realizations it makes you so much better at looking at them specifically or micro apply. When you see how they're macro apply. Like I know that one day this is it. It's going to end. And before I get to that point, I'm not going to look like this. I'm not going to move like this. I'm not going to even think like this really. So I'm going to deteriorate over time. So what I have to do is use my current time wisely and invest and put in place systems and make investments that'll pay off and take care of me later. Okay, if I can take that idea and see how that applies to a general existence, because I think that rule applies to everyone, then I can look at how it starts to work specifically. I can go, okay, I can take this time and I can try. I found this with writing. I can put a lot of time into the article. And generally speaking, I mean, unless I'm like dead off and it's just not right, like a dud, I do all the SEO research. I craft the wording right. I link it on my site correctly. I put time into promoting it. Make sure the research is back. The points are made eloquently and clear. This takes a lot of work to put together a quality piece of content. But if I do it right, that quality piece of content
Pay for itself.
This is why I love affiliate marketing, because if you have a good thing that you have really used and got a lot of, and you take the time to discuss it and make sure people get it, then the article you put together about it, or the video now with YouTube, because YouTube is basically a video search engine. That's how I look at it. It's like you will get paid off it repeatedly, and people will find you and trust you. You will last. But if you just, this is you want to compare like Twitter versus writing on a website. A lot of people love Twitter because it's fast. Yep. It's so like, and people have made entire careers calling themselves writers because all they do is tweet. But they don't realize, man, like I know because I research this stuff because it's really important for me to know. Your tweet only has a half-life of what? It's 18 to 24 minutes on average. On average. We're not talking stuff that goes viral. So that's 18 to 24 minutes. Your wisdom is out there. Why not take some of that and cultivate it into a solid, long-form post that people will be able to find and read repeatedly over and over? And not only that, the cool thing about a website compared to social media is that the way the algorithm works on a website, time works for you instead of against you. And it's one of those things, man. Time, when you understand time, you see how it interplays with your work and the trade-offs you have to make in your allocation of it. You make better decisions that are going to set you up better for long term.
I love that point you just made there too. I think it wraps everything up. Yeah, perfectly. That whole concept of time working for you. And I was thinking about this the other day. Somebody asked on Twitter, he asked, like, what's the worst part of getting older? And a whole bunch of people jumped in with, their opinions on that. And then a couple minutes later, he asked, what's the best part of getting older? And I was thinking about it, and I think that's what it is. It's that realization. There's a certain point. This is happening for me, and it's been my favorite part of getting older. So I hope this is something that happens for everyone, where you've just been around long enough to realize that short-term mindset, it is useful when you're young. In fact, I think it's crucial when you're young to have like a go out, hustle, get results fast mindset, because that's what helps set you apart as like a useful person that older, more experienced people are going to want to have around, right? They're going to, and those are the people who are going to teach you the ropes. But you get to a certain point where your energy just isn't a match anymore for the younger people coming up. and you got to have a different advantage. It can't just be about like I can't work 18 hours a day anymore. I used to be able to work till 2 o'clock in the morning, go to bed, wake up at 6, and do it
Sweet, man.
all
I used to
over
be able
again.
to sleep like 3 hours a night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would laugh at people who said that you lose that over time. It affects me differently now than it ever used to before. And so what I've been focusing on is like, okay, well, what's the next advantage? And it's what you said, it's time. Like, how can you make time work for you instead of against you?
Love that.
And yeah, I think that's probably going to be the title of this episode. But
For sure.
it's such a great point, Ed. And I think it comes down to that. And I think there's one other thing that's related to what we've been talking about here, which I think people will be familiar with, even though they may not have thought of it through this lens. There's oftentimes you see people who are successful for a long period of time. I mean, Tim Ferriss comes to mind as one. Another guy, Neville Medora, who I just listened to a great interview with him on Sam's podcast the other day. He's been doing the copywriting course for like 15 years. And I think a lot of the videos are still the same as they were 15 years ago, or at least that's what it sounds like. So like these people have long-term sustained success. What makes them tick? A lot of times you'll look at them and you'll say, well, why are they still doing stuff? Right? Like they've made their money. How much more money do you need? Why is Tim putting out another book? He should just be on a beach. And here's the reason. The reason is this. Because in order to get to the point where you have that like large sustained success, I think you almost by definition need to get to a point where the action of like putting in the time, creating the content, sharing the idea, the action is more satisfying to you than the idea of the outcome.
Yeah.
Oh man,
The
this
process.
reminds me of an argument I once had. I had to explain to someone. They were criticizing someone. They were like, "Oh, she's already in shape. What does she need to go to the gym for?" I'm like, "No. You don't understand.
Yeah.
There comes to get in shape. Your mind has to be to a point where you just do these things and they're part of your life, and you do it over time. But getting in shape is the best way to see that and prolong success, because you can't just like wake up one day and decide, okay, today I'm going to make sure I eat slightly in deficit. It's going to be all whole foods and lift, and then you wake up tomorrow and you have a six pack, right? Doesn't work that way. You got to put in time and effort without seeing any results off them. And then one day you see they're there. So the person who's in shape and like really in shape, they continue to go because now at this point you could get away with a little bit of like maintenance and slack off, but no, for them it's now part of their life. It's not even about looking good anymore.
Yeah.
Like
they're not
It's about
chasing that
doing it.
outcome. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're not. Yeah, exactly. They're not chasing the outcome anymore. It's because doing the thing is the only thing that makes them happy now. And that's kind of like the ironic twist behind all this stuff. Business, fitness. It's like in order to actually for it to work, you like you said, you have to become the person who is satisfied by doing the work. And I don't think I realized. That took me a while to realize that myself. And so now I try to remember that because like when I was young, I was just like, I just want to make the money, right? I want to make the money so that I can go live on a beach and not have to do jack shit. And surprise, surprise, that hasn't made me millions. You know, what I think about now is, did I do the thing? Did I show up and do the thing today? Whether that's recording a podcast or like for me, it's specifically trying to teach on Twitter. Like I love writing. Writing is what I'm so happy and lucky to be able to do it for a job. The Twitter ecosystem, a little bit of work for me. So I try to sit down and specifically do that once a day. And I can tell people who are listening to this is still kind of a new journey for me, but so far, there does come a point when there is a dissatisfaction that comes if you didn't sit down, even if you don't want to do it for the day. Like you don't feel like doing it, it just nags at you that you didn't. And I think that goes for fitness, it goes for business, it goes for all these things. You have to cultivate that mindset of doing the thing.
Yeah, I was like, once you have it, nothing can stop you. You're just it's a different kind of contentment and enjoyment. You actually look at people chasing the cheese, and you're like, don't you understand that if you just went and put the work in to build a garden, you would, or not to build a garden, but milk your own cows and learn that you could actually have all the cheese you want but you're chasing it. It's like chasing short term, money. You see this on like the hustle, very very big, interesting hustle culture on Twitter. I was just having this talk with my tech director, who doubles as my marketing guy or part of my marketing guy, and sometimes my therapist, and he's like, there's a place and time. He said, there was a place and time for your bias towards action. That was how he called it. Instead of, I said, I'm impulsive. He goes, no, you had a bias towards action, and that helped you get to where you're at now. But now you don't need to do that, and you can focus more on the quality. You don't have to worry about putting out so much. Someone who does this really great is Dave Perel. I just finished his writing class, Write a Passage, and he talks about how he wants, the way he uses Twitter, he wants to make sure that when you go and look at his feed, everything that you see is powerful, is insightful, is useful. And when I heard that, first of all, this was another guy in Austin, right? When I heard that, I was like, wow, man, what a great way to think about creating content, because you're not chasing the short, let me get followers, let me get followers. You're like, let me build sustainable stuff. And I was like, and then I felt bad. I was like, man, maybe I think I've fallen away from from what got me to kind of where I was at, or how that works. And I said, when you see people who do it, you respect it and you want to emulate it because it's what makes them successful.
That's a great point, and maybe we'll wrap on this because I know we want to be respectful of your time. But there's you just touched on something I gotta double click on real quick for people, which is that respect that comes from seeing somebody who's doing the work. So for anybody listening to this, I know like I'm kind of lucky because I work for a publication, right? So that gives you an automatic excuse to talk to people who otherwise would have no business talking, or like I'd have no business talking to. If you don't have that, one way you can kind of get in touch with the people that you look up to or respect in the field, I don't remember who talked about it this way first, but I've always loved this analogy, is to switch your focus from the gallery to the studio. And what they mean by that is like a lot of these people who are out there creating, they're toiling behind the scenes to put something together that is great. Like they're going to the gym, so to speak, right? And then every once in a while, there's the prize fight where they're publishing or they're putting a book out or whatever it is. That's the thing that everybody sees. And it's really hard to try to get in touch with them there because they're in audience mode. Like I'm talking to the world, I'm fielding questions. They're just kind of pitching stuff back. If you really want to get in touch with these people, like what you said is so key. First thing you got to do is you got to be putting the work in consistently so that when they look at your stuff, they're like, okay, this person's serious. It's worth my time to invest in like talking to them. And the second thing is to shift that focus away from their gallery, away from where they're displaying things to the world and towards their studio. Where are they working? Like if in the case of writers, where do writers hang out when they're not publishing, so to speak? Basically, the way to do this is try and figure out what do they care about that's not that they're publishing.
I'm laughing because this is you got to filter information through your own pieces of experience, and that helps you retain it and remember it and use it. And the first thing I thought of is like you'll see these posts online like, where are all the good men at? And like, well, they're not where you're looking because you're looking. Yeah, you see them when they're with their significant others, right? So that's part of where they're at. But perhaps you become the person that ends up being where these guys hang out before they're with someone, so you can snag one up. And that's a whole different, that's an entirely different change, or not entirely different change, but it's a whole different way of thinking about the problem. That is I always say humans are bad at the future. They're just not good at, and there's been research on this. We're really bad at thinking about what will happen at a distant time from us, a different event. But this is one of those things when you make that shift to go, okay, I know they've got to be working to put something out, and I'm not going to see them, or they're not even going to want to interact with me really when they're there. Let me think about how to interact with them later, how to get behind the scenes. And now that changes your whole thought process, because then you realize, well, now you got to pay for the cost of admission. Yep. Anybody, look, going to the gym is cheap. But if you want to know a fighter, you got to be a fighter. And that means you got to do what fighters do. Anybody, once you got a bunch of followers, that's amazing how many pictures I get from people. This is not, I wish I was making this up, but to write emails from me. I'm like, are you kidding? Do you know what I like writing? Don't take that away from me. But proof of that, if they had, if you want to really interact with me and do some work in business, okay, you got to be a writer. And this kind of comes back to what we were saying at the very beginning about being where the people are who are doing what you do. If you want the most opportunities, you have to think like that. How can I be part of the club? How can I run the race? I don't want to just show up at the finish line, because that's where everybody's trying to sign the runner, right? The winner. You want to be with him, when he's training in the gym, and really that's where you get the secrets, the insights, the game.
That was perfect, man.
Perfect.
Yeah, we're gonna that's the line right there. You want to be you want to know fighters, you got to be a fighter. And I'm so glad you wrapped it up with that frame, because for anybody who's listening to this, I don't think I did a good job of this, but it's like, if you're wondering how to make this happen, you touched on it perfectly. You go do the thing that they're doing and do it consistently. If you want to know an author, you probably want to know them because there's some party that aspires to be an author. Yep. Go do that work and have something to show for it, and then they're going to approach you as more of a peer if you can bring that portfolio.
That's how you get in the club, man. That's how you get like that's how you get in the club. You got to do the thing, and they're like, okay, you look like you belong because you speak the language, you understand the customs and the rules. All right, come on in, and now your life is better.
Love that. I'm gonna be thinking about that all day. I'm about to go to Muay Thai training too, and I'm just thinking about how you recognize that thing about yourself which you see in other people, and just this concept of like getting into the club, letting time work for you as opposed to the other way around, and there's just no shortcuts to do that. And so it sounds like trite a little bit to say out loud, but to really internalize it and measure it against your own experiences, where it's like, oh yeah, that's how that happened for me, I think it's much different. So Ed, I sincerely appreciate your time. It's been great hanging out with you on the Twitter sphere. It's been great just getting to know you, going back and forth. I hope we can meet up one day. I know that you and I have a lot in common with our just beliefs and our history and the things we've been through. So
right down in Nashville too, man. So I'm not right down in Nashville. That was a 9-hour drive when I made it, but but yeah, for sure, man.
Where can people check you out if they want to find more? Yeah.
I'm Ed Latimore everywhere, man. I'm Ed Latimore on Twitter, Ed Latimore on Instagram. My website is edlatimore.com. So just type it in on your favorite platform. YouTube channel, Ed Latimore.
And the newsletter is Stoic Street Smarts, right? Stoic Street Smarts. Why can I
come on in?
Stoic
check it out.
Smarts.
Check it out.
All that up. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. Like the show, leave us a comment. It's the best thing you can do to support the show. We don't have any ads. We just want to provide value and make sure that you guys are digging what we're up to. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you next week.